What's going on, young people? Thanks for joining me for our third lecture on motivation, emotion, and personality. After 2 homeworks on motivation, we are moving on to talk about emotion today. So we're going to kind of do an introduction of what emotions are, and then talk about 4 theories of emotion and how they apply across different cultures. So to start off, when we talk about emotions, we're just talking about how you experience feelings. Okay? So this word emotions is just a fancy word for how humans experience feelings. And there are 3 things that determine what emotions you feel. The first thing are chemicals in your body, right? This is the biological approach to psychology, the idea that everything psychological can be explained by a physiological explanation. So in this case, there are chemical substances either in your brain, which we call neurotransmitters, or those substances are in your bloodstream, and we call them hormones. Okay? So the first thing that impacts your emotions are literally the chemicals inside your body making you feel a certain type of way, right? Oxytocin might make you feel love. Adrenaline might make you feel stress, right? Dopamine might make you feel good. So the chemicals impact how you feel. Second, activity in your emotional center, right? The limbic system, we talked about little kids, when they do the limbo, they get emotional, right? That's where the amygdala is, the hippocampus in charge of memories. What the limbic system is doing determines what you feel, okay? And then throughout your entire body, we have what's called the fight or flight response, okay? It's not the parasympathetic calming you, it's the sympathetic getting you amped up, getting you excited. So you cannot control the fight or flight response. It just happens. It's automatic, autonomic, right? If you see a threat, if there's a stressor in your life, then your body will make some changes accordingly, and that impacts the emotions that you feel, okay? So what happens when you see a threat? That fight or flight response, well, if you look here, your pupils open up wide to let more light in. We talked about that in our sensation and perception units. Your mouth gets dry. You might start to sweat a little bit as your body tries to regulate your temperature. Goosebumps do the same thing, keeping heat in. Your breathing passages open up to let more air get into your lungs. Your heart rate might go up, your breathing rate increases, the blood flows to different parts of your body as your adrenal glands produce adrenaline, your stomach slows down because your brain doesn't want to worry about your stomach when there could be a threat going on. So all these changes happen, and that impacts how you feel. Okay? This is the fight or flight response, and it takes some time after a threat, even if your body realizes within a second or two that it's not really a bear, there's not really going to be an accident. Even after things calm down, it still takes your brain some time to get over the fact that it just released all this adrenaline in your system. And it takes your pupils a little bit of time to get back to normal. Same thing with your heart rate and breathing and temperature. So the fight or flight response, it completely changes your body so that you can be ready in case there's a threat. It's better to act like there's a threat and overreact than to ignore a threat, right? So we talked about that with signal detection theory previously. So how do you feel? How does your brain communicate these emotions? A researcher, Joseph Ledoux, said that there's 2 different ways that emotions can be communicated. There's the fast pathway for what we call the danger emotions, fear and anger. So like when there is a threat, those signals go straight to your amygdala so that you can act on those aggressive, dangerous emotions when there is danger. Now, most of the time, your more complex emotions, we call them your slower emotions, okay? And those emotions don't go straight from the thalamus to the amygdala, but instead, those emotions go from the thalamus up to your brain, the cerebral cortex, where they bounce around so you can think about and process that information and come to a conclusion. So these are the 2 pathways. There's a famous book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's referring to how our brains have an emotional response that's usually fear and anger based, your gut reaction to things, and then after some time goes by and you're able to process, you might have a different, more complex reaction, emotional feeling about that event. So fast and slow pathways, kind of like how pain has fast and slow pathways. So quick check for understanding. Make sure you can answer these questions. Number 3 is good review. Number 2 is pretty straightforward, we just went over. Number 1, remember there are 3 things that cause emotions. So let's talk about the theories of emotions. So 4 different theories as to how our body responds when we have an emotion. So common sense would state right? If I say, like, how does your body respond to an emotion? Common sense says that you feel a type of way, you feel happy, then your body responds. Then you have the physiological response. So, like, you're happy, then you smile. You're angry, then you tense up. You're disgusted, then you wrinkle your nose. You're sad, then you cry. 1 second.
Please pardon this interruption.
Great, just didn't want y'all to have to hear that announcement. Okay. She felt afraid, so then her heart started racing. Emotion, body response. That's how common sense works. We're going to go over our 3 theories that are not common sense. So the first one is the James Lange theory, or it's German, so James Longae theory. James Longae theory. Okay? William James and Carl Longae said that they believed emotion happened backwards. They believed that your body responds to the stimulus in your environment, and then you feel the emotion. So they thought that, like, your heart races, then you feel afraid. Or that you smile, and then you feel happy. Or you cry, and then that makes you feel sad. They thought that the body was quicker than the brain, which is interesting, okay? The problem with that is, like, sometimes someone might be crying, and couldn't there be different reasons for that? Like, have you ever cried not because you were sad, but have you ever cried because you were maybe mad, or because you were so happy, or because you were frustrated, or, like, maybe you were just tired, right? So the problem with this theory is that it makes it seem like there's one physical response for each emotion, okay? But the theory is not perfect. So let's look at what we call the Schachter two-factor theory. Schachter two-factor. It's a fun mnemonic. Schachter two-factor. Stanley Schachter, and sometimes called the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. But anytime you see this name Schachter, what they did was they took the James Long theory and they added in a second factor. They said that they agree that your body is quicker than your brain. So you have a physical response, and then here's the key phrase. They said that you appraise, you evaluate, you look at, you think about your surroundings. And based on what's happening around you, some thinking occurs, then you feel the emotion. James Longae just said, your body does something, you feel the emotion. They said, no. Your body does something, and basically you kind of look around. So, like, if you're crying, you might look around and see that, everyone's wearing graduation robes and hats, and you're tossing them in the air. You might say, oh my gosh, these tears, I'm graduating, these are tears of happiness, right? Or maybe, you are having an argument with a friend, and you're crying, but you think about the situation, and you realize you're crying because you're just so frustrated. Or sometimes you're crying and you're watching Inside Out, you're watching Coco, and you realize, oh, these tears are sadness, right? I was watching The Queen's Gambit, finishing it up, and I was crying at a scene, and my wife said, oh, you're so sad. I said, no, I'm so happy for the character. I was crying because I was just overwhelmed with positive feelings, okay? Schachter's theory says what's happening around us is what determines the emotion that we feel, right? So this person, their heart was racing. She could not figure out what had caused the explosion, so she felt afraid. Sometimes heart racing might mean something else. But in this case, her evaluation, her appraisal of her environment, her surroundings, lets her know, oh, this heart racing, it has to do with fear, okay? Let's talk about this whole heart racing thing real quick. So within the Schachter two-factor theory in your notes, there's something that's happened sometimes called excitation transfer or excitatory transfer, okay? It's also something called a spillover effect. The idea here is that sometimes you're excited about one thing, but your brain thinks that you're excited about something different. Let me give you an example. You see these 2 bridges here? Okay? I don't like bridges very much. So, like, this bridge would make me a little bit nervous going across a river, even though it's a pretty sturdy suspension bridge. This bridge is terrifying. I would never want to go across this bridge. It would freak me out too much, okay? But they did a really interesting study, okay, where they asked, let me make sure I get this right. Okay, they had straight men, heterosexual men, walk across these two bridges, okay? And as they were going across the bridge, there was an interviewer who asked them a few questions, okay? And in some cases, the interviewer was an attractive female, and in some cases, the interviewer was an attractive male, okay? So these were all straight dudes going across the bridge. They were asked some questions as they were crossing the bridge, and then the interviewer said, if there's anything else you want to talk to me about, here's my business card, feel free to give me a call, okay? So all participants walk across the bridge, scary bridge, normal bridge, female interviewer, male interviewer, okay? Straight white dudes. What they were measuring, the dependent variable, was they wanted to find out which of these dudes called the interviewer with follow-up questions, okay? And what they found was that on the normal, nice, calm bridge, only 2 subjects called the female interviewer, only 1 subject called the male interviewer. They just walked across the bridge, not a whole lot of follow-up questions, okay? And when they were on the scary bridge, what the researchers called the arousing bridge, because it increased arousal, heart rate, breathing, flight or fight response, right? These straight white dudes, I don't know if they're white, these straight males, they didn't really call the male interviewer, right? They didn't have a lot of follow-up questions for him, okay? Now, here's the interesting things. When they were on the scary bridge where their heart rate was up and their breathing was heavy and their brain was firing a lot, and then an attractive female interviewer said, hey, give me a call if you have any questions, a ton of these straight dudes called up this interviewer later. Hey, girl, how you doing? I got some follow-up questions, right? What the researchers realized is that their heart rate and their body's response to the bridge, these dudes were transferring the excitement they were feeling from just the bridge being scary, and they were thinking that they had this like romantic, emotional, passionate encounter and interaction with this female researcher, and that she wanted them to call her up with their follow-up questions, right? Ask her out, that kind of thing. What they found is that people often, they don't understand why their body is doing the things they are doing. So what happens with this Schachter-Singer 2-factor theory is that sometimes we misattribute, we misread our own feelings. We think we're mad when we're really excited. We think we're scared when we're really anxious, okay? So that's interesting. Now, I told you 4 theories. This is only a 3rd theory, because sometimes we have an emotional response before our body has even done anything, right? Right? Schachter and James Long said that our body does something, then we have the emotion. But sometimes we feel the emotion first, right? Or it seems simultaneous. So the last theory of emotion is the Canvard Theory, okay? And what Walter Cannon Philip Bard said was that the emotion and the body response happen at the exact same time. Cannon Bard, all at once, simultaneously, she felt afraid as her heart raced, as she saw the explosion. These things happen together at the same time. Cannon Bard, all at once. The emotion and the body respond. So those are 4 theories for you as to how we respond emotionally, okay? And in class, we'll talk about this example with the dog barking. I want you to do a little check for understanding, okay? Imagine there's a snake in the room, and you feel fear. According to the James Longae theory, okay, James Longae, all right, long, it runs through the words backwards, so common sense says emotion, then body, but they were long, they were wrong, they were backwards in my mind. They had it mixed up. So they said that your body responds, then you feel a fear. So your pulse, your heart races, that's what makes you feel fear. Schachter's 2-factor theory still says that your pulse races first, but they say that, they say that you pulse races, then you look around, see the snake, and because of that, you realize, oh, snakes, I'm supposed to be afraid of snakes, this is fear. The Cannon-Bard theory says that as you see the snake, right, as sensory information goes to the sensory switchboard, the thalamus, as you see the snake, you simultaneously feel afraid, and your autonomic nervous system, autonomic, starts to create that sympathetic fight or flight response, and it's all at the exact same time. Okay, that's the theory here. So make sure that you can answer these check for understanding questions. and try to figure out which theory of emotion suggests that. One, which theory of emotion explains why Jimmy does this, poor Jimmy, and which theory of emotion says this. Okay? Make sure you can do this from your notes, from memory. All right, last little section here is about how we experience emotions across different cultures. The researcher's name is Paul Ekman, and go ahead and put a star by his name, Ekman, okay? And he said that there are 6 universal facial expressions, so like 6 universal emotions across all cultures. Just test yourself. Here's a list of 15 emotions. Maybe pause the video. See if you can identify which of these you think are the 6 universal emotions, okay? So pause it, try it out. Okay? Here are the 6. Happy, sad, anger, disgust, surprise, and fear. Happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, surprise, and fear. Write those 6 universal emotions down. How many of y'all saw Inside Out? Okay? They did a pretty good job of basing their emotions off some of these universal emotions and facial expressions. The one thing they did that was different, so they do have joy was happy, sad was sad, we had anger, we had fear. So what they did was they took this disgust character, they took the fear character and kind of lumped fear and surprise all into this one character. They thought that 6 characters would be too much for kids to handle, so they only stuck with 5 characters, which is interesting. He actually did research on this movie to help the Pixar folks out. Okay, and his research also shows that with these 6 emotions, people express them the same across different cultures. So we'll talk about this in class a little bit, how you can read people's emotions. Okay, and then he also came up with this theory called the facial feedback hypothesis. Put a star by it. Where he said that the muscles in your face, when you do a certain thing with your face, maybe you push up your cheeks or drop your eyes a little bit or raise your upper lip, he said that you doing the stuff with your face, that it actually sends a signal to the brain that tells your brain how to feel. So Ekman said that your body, when your face changes, when your body responds, that creates a particular emotion. Body, then emotion. That's his facial feedback hypothesis. And we'll talk about some interesting research with that and what theory it supports the most. Okay? So, cool. Some final check for understanding questions for you. Make sure you can answer these without your notes. Good luck. I will see y'all in class for our quiz later. Peace out.